got this.
I'm Songjin from Hanyang University, and I have a question about, so if you got the two different results from psychological and physiological result, then what should we actually believe? What's the exact state of the participant's emotion?
That is a great question, and that comes to the question of like, what is stress, what is anxiety, and what is emotion, and the different frameworks for that. And then my academic belief right now is that these are all valid aspects of stress and anxiety. But if you like look into people who like unpack anxiety, there are like 4 facelets to it. They are physiological, psychological, behavioral, and something else. But these are all like embodied. My advisor is laughing. But these are all like valid sections of anxiety, and we choose which part to target on, which thing to measure, depending on what we all want our system to do. But if I do something, if I work on a anxiety that's more on the psychological, physiological side, I would care less about the behavioral side, which often embodies in adverse behavior. Part of it is like using alcohol to ease stress. That's a stress behavioral marker.
All right, well, very cool work, Zhao. This is Pablo. So my question for you is, so affect is not just arousal, and I think you were testing arousal modulation. I think it will be nice to understand the valence changes. Maybe you're actually inducing pleasure and not so much arousal, so maybe the difference here is not so much the variation on the arousal axis, but on the pleasure side, which is actually one of the hardest things to modulate and to measure also, which is a challenge for affective computing in general, the valence part. What do you think?
I think, I agree. I'm glad you brought that up because both of my previous 2 presenters showed the figure of valence and arousal. And I think one thing that's among people who work on passive intervention is that we often do not distinguish them. Right? We do not distinguish which part of the axis we're trying to drive people from and to. Well, in this work, which is quite early in my career, that was not an awareness. In my current work, I have to think about that, think about what exactly are we moderating. And I feel another challenge, which is perhaps not, do I have time? Do I have time? Okay, let's not go into a longer topic. So I don't think psychology have quite figured that out yet, which is like we often just take their work and cite them and like use it as golden standard. But the people who develop anxiety series and like treatment that use this series, they do not fully understand. They do not talk to the people who study valence and arousal, which like causes this like theoretical gap that when we start to build interventions, and we, as you said in the workshop, like we are trying to contribute to psychology now. This is a challenge that we all face. So I also wonder your opinion, because you work on this more than I do. Yes?
I think to be continued in the panel discussion, but let's move on to the next paper. We're right in the middle of the session, and this is a one-author paper. It's a provocative title, so take it away.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Helma Torkamaan. I'm a faculty member at TU Delft in the Netherlands. And this paper is about mood measurement application. So even if you are not designing an app, and for example, you are using an existing data set, this paper highlights points that you should consider. If I want to present the entire paper in one slide, the core idea and contribution of this paper is to highlight the importance and differences between assessment quality and app quality. Assessment quality being validity of assessment, and app quality being the user experience and functional quality. Unfortunately, we rarely have solutions that address both. The paper discussed the following research questions: whether the type and the design of a mood measure impact the mood value validity, user compliance over time, and the overall user experience. To answer the research question, I looked into 2 general purpose measure of mood, one being PANAS short form, IPANAS SF with 10 item, and the second one being affect grade, which is a short measure of different affect model. The classic versions were designed to be as close as possible to the original pen and paper form. For other design, a chatbot and an interactive version was considered. Therefore, we had 2 measures and 3 designs per each measure. In total, 6 measurement tools. Then I built an app that was able to capture mood using all of these tools. To answer the research question, a study was conducted using the application that was developed, this study design had 3 parts. Each part referred to one of the research questions. The entire study resulted in a data set with more than 90,000 mood entries from 1,400 participants. The value of mood is subjective. So to determine assessment quality, users recorded their mood using all of these 6 presented measurement tools in random order with a within subject study assessment, capturing how was their mood for the past few hours. So the takeaway from analyzing the results suggests that measure A, based on PANAS, was resilient toward design modification. However, this was not the case for affect grid. Therefore, the design of a measure can influence the resulting values depending on the resilience of the measure to modification. Part 2 of the study was about user compliance in experience sampling. After the pre-study, users were randomly assigned to one of these 6 groups, and where each group were using only one of the tools. They used the tool for about 2 weeks, and they had at least twice daily prompt for the sampling, which asked users to record their mood. The concept of compliance in the literature has different definition. However, these differences has not been well explored. So I therefore extended the definition of compliance by 8 variables, considering for answers that are responses that are recorded too quickly or drop out or endurance, as well as motivational responses. This provides a more complete picture of user engagement and compliance. I then compared the measures and the designs in these 8 variables using regression models. So the takeaway from analyzing these results, which all of the details are in the paper, is that how one defines compliance can impact the outcome. Although the general assumption is that a shorter measurement tool is less hassle and would bring higher compliance, that's not necessarily the case. And it can bring also more meaningless responses. Users also spend less time on self-reflection with shorter measurement tools, namely measure B, which was affect grid. This was measured using touch-level modeling. So we know for sure that there is going to be less self-reflection. After 2 weeks of use, then we had part 3 of the study, user experience, capturing both quantitative and qualitative responses from users based on their experience of using the application. The data suggests that the design alternatives were not scoring better than the classic versions. System usability score for all user groups were pretty similar and close to excellent, which suggests that one should be careful with claims of improvement in the literature for design of a new mood measurement tool and check suggested improvement with these new baselines, basically. So how can we explain that a shorter measurement tool does not perform or bring higher user compliance compared to a longer one? To answer this question, I looked into variable of compliance and user experience together. For example, modeling completion rate, I found that improving the efficiency as captured by user experience questionnaire of a design alternative for a measure can improve the completion rate overall up to 25%. While efficiency seemed to be relatively effective and important criterion, TLM or the measure's length can improve compliance, can reduce compliance by about 6%. The same applies for user experience questionnaire stimulation score. But if we look into another variable of compliance, for example, motivational responses, that are responses that the user take initiative to record outside experience sampling prompts, then we have a total contrasting result with completion rate. And that's UEQ efficiency score decreases the chances, and stimulation increases the chances of motivational responses. In other words, an increase in efficiency or decrease in stimulation based on our modeling may increase system prompt sampling completion and reduce self-motivated responses. To conclude, measures have different resilience to design modification, which impact their assessment quality. Measures and design impact some variables of compliance, and whether an interactive chatbot or classic design is better or worse for user compliance, on the whole, depend on the measure. To answer which measure and design to use, one can go for a valid and resilient measure and maximize its efficiency in design. Alternatively, one can design a new short measure with high app quality, but it has to be tested thoroughly for assessment quality. Some additional lesson learned of this study is that first impression, actual user behavior, and user experience after use could be very different from each other when I take all the qualitative and quantitative data that was captured in the entire study. Efficiency and stimulation score of a mood tracking tool are two factors that could impact user compliance variable. And to conclude, if you are interested to know more, let's chat. The paper is a very dense one to summarize within the talk. Thank you.
Hello, Pablo again. So I'm a bit confused. What was the dropout rate and the adherence? Because I don't know if you're confounding compliance with these two, or maybe you're separating those from those. I will really want to understand the overall.
I defined a separate variable and considered like how much a user continued using the application, because the study was for 2 weeks, but they could continue using the application as long as they wanted. So given that, we had a dropout rate depending on when the user dropped out of the study.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had another variable, endurance, stating how long someone continued using the application, which I had right now, which is not in the paper. We have like users after 2-3 years still continuing using it.
But was there difference? Were there differences in the dropout rates on each of these conditions? Or
Not
not
necessarily.
Okay. I'm puzzled. I'm gonna read your paper. Really interesting.
I would love to chat with you.
Discussion coming up. Nobody has sent a message on the app yet. So there's an app where you can type your message or questions.
It was working when I was testing, but